The smell of pine sap still makes my stomach turn. Every Christmas, when I set up this tree behind me, that sharp, clean scent takes me back to 1952. I was 12 years old, standing in our living room in Detroit, watching my father pack his one good suitcase with the same careful precision he used to fold his work clothes at the Ford plant. "Where you going, Daddy?" I asked, knowing the answer would be the same lie he'd told for 5 years running. "Got to help your Uncle James down in Alabama. Emergency with the farm." He snapped the suitcase shut without looking at me. "Be back after New Year's." But we didn't have an Uncle James, and my father had never set foot on a farm in his life. What we had was a mystery that would haunt our family for 38 years. What we had was a man who became a stranger every December 23rd and stayed that way until January 3rd. My name is Robert. I'm 85 years old now, sitting in this same living room where I watched my father disappear year after year. And 3 months ago, I finally discovered where he went. Not Alabama, not to help family. He went to live his other life, his other name, his other family, in Canada. It started small, the way most betrayals do. December 1947. I was 7, still young enough to believe adults told the truth about everything important. Daddy worked the night shift at River Rouge, came home smelling like motor oil and metal shavings, hands permanently stained black, no matter how hard he scrubbed with that harsh lye soap. But every year, right before Christmas, something changed in him. He'd get restless, checking the mail twice a day, counting money at the kitchen table when he thought nobody was looking. Mama would find excuses to stay busy, cleaning things that were already clean, baking more cookies than we could eat in a month. "Daddy's got important business," she'd tell me when I asked why he was acting strange. "Men got responsibilities you don't understand yet." The night before Christmas Eve, he'd pull out that brown leather suitcase from the back of their bedroom closet, the one with his initials burned into the handle. R.W., Robert Washington. He'd packed 2 weeks' worth of clothes like he was going on some grand adventure, but his face looked like he was headed to his own funeral. Christmas morning came and went without him. Mama would make ham and sweet potato pie. We'd open our presents, and she'd set his place at the table anyway. His chair would stay empty while we ate, and after dinner she'd wrap his plate in wax paper and put it in the icebox. "For when Daddy gets back," she'd say, same as always. By the time I turned 16, I'd stopped asking when he'd return. By 20, I'd moved out and started my own life. But every Christmas when I called home, Mama would mention, casual as discussing the weather, that Daddy was away helping Uncle James again. I got married in 1965, had 3 children by 1970, started working at General Motors, bought a house 6 blocks from where I grew up. Normal life, American dream stuff. But every December, when my own kids asked why Grandpa Robert wasn't coming for Christmas dinner, I'd have to explain that Grandpa had important business elsewhere. "What kind of business is more important than family?" my eldest Marcus asked when he was 12. Same age I'd been when I started questioning Daddy's disappearances. I didn't have an answer then, didn't think I ever would. Most people walk away when stories get this heavy. The fact that you're still listening, that means something. Hit subscribe. I've got more to tell. Daddy died in February 1985. Heart attack at the Ford plant, age 73. Dropped dead right there on the assembly line, wrench still in his hand. The funeral was small. Mama, me, my wife and kids, Handful of neighbours, few men from his work crew. But there was this woman there I'd never seen before. White woman, maybe 60 years old, standing in the back of Mount Olive Baptist Church, wearing a black coat that looked expensive. She didn't sing the hymns, didn't bow her head during prayer, just watched the service with red-rimmed eyes like she'd been crying for days. After we buried Daddy at Elmwood Cemetery, she approached me by the parking lot. "Excuse me," she said, voice shaking, Canadian accent, definitely Canadian. "Are you Robert's son?" "Yes, ma'am. You knew my father?" She looked around like she was afraid someone might overhear. "I'm Sarah Mackenzie, from Windsor. Your father, he was my husband." The world tilted sideways. Cars kept driving past on Jefferson Avenue, people kept walking, life kept moving, but everything inside my head went completely silent. "That's not possible," I said. "My father was married to my mother for 42 years. 42 years, she nodded. Same amount of time he was married to me. Sarah Mackenzie explained it all, standing right there in that cemetery parking lot, while my mother sat in our Buick 20 feet away, probably wondering who I was talking to. Turns out my father hadn't been helping Uncle James for 38 years. He'd been crossing the border into Canada every December 23rd to spend Christmas with his other family. His other wife, his other children, his other life. "We lived in Windsor," Sarah said, "right across from Detroit. Bobby would take the tunnel under the river, be at our house in 20 minutes. Told us he worked construction jobs that took him away most of the year, but he always came home for Christmas." Bobby. She called him Bobby. To us, he was Robert. To them, he was Bobby Mackenzie, construction worker from Ontario, who disappeared 11 months out of the year, but never missed December 25th with his Canadian family. "How many children?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Two, David and Susan. They would be your half-brother and sister." Half-brother, half-sister? People I'd never met who shared my father's blood, my father's hands, probably my father's stubborn streak and his way of humming old spirituals when he thought nobody was listening. "Did he love you?" The question came out before I could stop it. "I thought so," Sarah said quietly. "For 38 years I thought so, but now, how do you love two families? How do you split your heart down the middle and give everyone enough?" I didn't have an answer. Still don't. Sarah gave me her address, phone number, asked if I wanted to meet David and Susan someday. I took the paper she handed me, folded it carefully, put it in my wallet. But I never called, never wrote, never crossed that river to meet the siblings I'd never known existed. Someone once told me there are rules that change after 60. One of them says that sacrifice without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. I wish I'd known that 30 years ago. If you want to know what those rules are, it's in the description. Instead, I went home and did what my family had always done best. I kept the secret. Told my wife about Sarah Mackenzie, about the other family, about the 38 years of Christmas lies. But we agreed not to tell our children, not to tell Mama. Some truths are too big for old hearts to carry. Mama lived until 1993. 8 more years of Christmas mornings when she'd set an extra place at the table out of habit, then catch herself and put the plate away. 8 more years of her mentioning, casual as anything, that Daddy would have loved to see the grandchildren opening presents. I never told her about Windsor. Never told her about Sarah Mackenzie or Bobby the construction worker, or the two children who called my father Dad in a different language. Let her die thinking her husband had been helping Uncle James all those years, thinking his absences had been sacrifice instead of betrayal. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe she deserved to know. But maybe some lies are kinder than some truths. After Mama's funeral, I found myself thinking more and more about those people across the river. About David and Susan Mackenzie, who were probably wondering why their father had vanished from their lives every January and never come back. About Sarah, who'd lost a husband she'd shared with strangers for nearly 4 decades. I started doing math I shouldn't have done. 38 years of 2-week Christmas visits. That's 76 weeks total. Less than 2 years out of a 42-year marriage. My father had given his Canadian family less than 2 years of his actual presence, spread out over nearly 4 decades. We got the other 40 years. The daily routine, the steady paycheck, the man who came home every night smelling like the Ford plant. They got Christmas morning and New Year's Eve, and 2 weeks of undivided attention once a year. Who got the better deal? The family who had him most of the time but never really had all of him? Or the family who got all of him but only for 14 days a year? I still don't know. What I do know is this. In 1998, 13 years after Daddy died, I finally drove through the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel. Took me 20 minutes, just like Sarah had said. 20 minutes to cross from one life into another. From Robert Washington's family to Bobby Mackenzie's world. I found their house on Riverside Drive. Small brick bungalow with a view of the Detroit skyline. Maple tree in the front yard. Canadian flag hanging limp in the still air. I sat in my car across the street for 2 hours, watching, wondering if David or Susan still lived there, wondering if they looked like me, wondering what I'd say if I knocked on that door. I never got out of the car. Instead, I drove back through that tunnel and never returned to Windsor. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Some families are meant to remain strangers. But every Christmas, when I look at this tree, when I smell that pine sap that used to signal my father's annual disappearance, I think about the Mackenzies. I wonder if David became a construction worker like his father pretended to be. I wonder if Susan got married, had children, told them stories about their grandfather, Bobby, who used to visit every Christmas but lived somewhere far away. I wonder if they hated him for leaving, or if they understood that some men aren't built for staying in one place, loving one family, living one life. Everything I learned about presence, about commitment, about the difference between loving many people partly and loving some people completely, it's all in something called the 60-year rule. 9 rules that explain exactly why everything I believed was wrong after 60. It changed how I see my family, my choices, my time, everything. Check the description. I'm 85 years old now. My children are grown, my grandchildren are in college, and I've spent 38 years trying to understand why a man would choose to live 2 separate lives instead of one complete one. I think I finally know. Fear. Not fear of commitment or fear of responsibility, fear of choosing. Fear that picking one family, one country, one name, one identity means admitting that all the other possibilities are gone forever. Fear that being fully present in one place means accepting that you can't be everywhere at once. My father thought he could have it all. 2 families, 2 identities, 2 chances at happiness. What he actually had was 2 families who never got all of him. 2 women who shared a husband they never knew they were sharing, and children on both sides of that river who grew up wondering why their father always seemed to be somewhere else, even when he was sitting right beside them. The Christmas tree behind me has new lights this year, LED bulbs that shine brighter and last longer than the old incandescent ones Daddy used to string up before he'd disappear. But they're still the same colours: red, green, white and blue, same as the ones we had in 1952 when I was 12 years old and still believed my father's lies about Uncle James and Alabama emergencies. Some traditions survive everything, even the truth. If Sarah Mackenzie is still alive, she's probably 90 years old now. If David and Susan are still in Windsor, they're probably grandparents themselves, maybe great-grandparents. Maybe they tell their families stories about their grandfather Bobby, who used to visit every Christmas, who brought presents and sang Canadian Christmas carols, and made them feel special for 2 weeks every year. Maybe they remember him fondly. Maybe they've forgiven him for being part-time. Maybe they understand that some love is better than no love at all. I hope so. I hope they got something good from those 38 Christmases. Something worth remembering. Something worth passing down to the next generation. Because on this side of the river, all we got were questions. All we got was the mystery of where he went, why he left, whether we were enough to keep him home. My father's name was Robert Washington, but somewhere across the Detroit River, he was Bobby Mackenzie. Same man, different life, different family, different promises he couldn't keep to different people who deserved better. 2 names, 2 countries, 2 families. One man who thought he could be everything to everyone and ended up being not quite enough for anyone. I never met my half-brother and sister. Never will, probably, but I hope they're well. I hope they found peace with the father who came and went like winter, regular as clockwork, reliable in his unreliability. And I hope they understand what it took me 85 years to learn. You can't love 2 families completely. You can't be fully present in 2 different lives. You can't give your whole heart to multiple people in multiple countries and expect anyone to feel completely loved. My father tried. God knows he tried. But trying isn't the same as succeeding. And good intentions aren't the same as good choices. Some men disappear because they don't want to be found. Others disappear because they're looking for themselves in places they'll never find what they're missing. My father was the second kind, and it cost everyone he loved a piece of the love they deserved. That's the truth I learned too late to change anything, but not too late to understand everything. For 38 Christmases, my father disappeared. Now I know where he went. I just wish I understood why he had to go.